and welcome to Vantage this week, a show where we recap the highlights of the week gone by. There was some bleak news this week. For young college graduates who are looking for jobs, they seem to be hard to find, even for students at elite institutions like IIT-Bombay. But what exactly is causing this job scarcity? We bring you the details. And speaking of scarcity, Europe is anticipating one, a scarcity of funds for Ukraine. NATO members fear that if Donald Trump returns to the White House, military assistance for Ukraine will stop coming. So they're planning to Trump-proof Ukrainian aid rather, before that happens. From scarcity, let's talk about abundance. In the African nation of Botswana, Botswana has an abundance of elephants, and it has threatened to send 20,000 of these to Germany. What will Germany do if that happens? Maybe take a leaf from their neighbors, the Netherlands. The Dutch have perfected something called Niksen. It's the art of doing nothing. We have all this and more on Vantage this week. Let's get started. The year was 2018. Elon Musk dropped a pearl on social media. He said engineering is the closest thing to magic. Many in India would agree. We've seen engineering create rags to riches stories, turn families in debt into millionaires, turn shy students into tech titans. So magic does sum it up. But the key to every bit of magic is secrecy. If the world knows your trick, you're no more in demand. Has engineering reached that stage? Have our modern degrees reached that state? Tonight we explore this question, and there's a reason why. Most of us agree that IITs are among the top colleges worldwide, the Indian Institutes for Technology. The assumption is you crack the IIT and you're set for life. A big pay package awaits you. Perhaps not anymore. The news coming out of the IITs is worrying. In the Bombay campus, 36% students are yet to be placed. Some 2,000 students had registered for placement. More than 700 are yet to get a job. We're talking about the best engineering college in India, also among the best globally. Yet 36% of its students are yet to be placed, and it's not a one-off. Last year was more of the same. In 2023, around 33% students did not get jobs. We looked at other IITs too. In the Delhi campus, 40% students were not placed in 2023. In Kanpur, 31% are yet to be placed. What does this tell you? The obvious, that the job market is struggling, and the data shows something peculiar. The more educated you are, the tougher it is to find a job. Let me show you some numbers. Graduate unemployment is almost 30%, 30. Unemployment among people with higher education is 18%. And now look at unemployment among people who cannot read or write, just 3.4%. This is called educated unemployment. And just to be clear, this does not mean that you should drop out of school or that college degrees are useless. It only means that you need to be smart about your education. Just think about it. If an IIT cannot get you placed, what chance do other colleges have? So we need to ask an important question. What is your college degree worth? Let's look at engineering first. The average cost of a degree is around 8 lakh rupees, which is 9,500 US dollar, the average. And what is the average salary? Between 15 and 30,000 rupees per month, let's say around $200. And this depends on a lot of variables like how the national economy is doing, how good your college is, and how efficient you are as an individual. Another popular degree is the MBA. It's a 2-year course that can cost more than 15 lakh rupees. That's around $18,000. And what do you get for that investment? Around $480 per month. And remember, the MBA is a postgraduate degree. So first you spend on graduation, then you spend on an MBA. Now let's compare these two degrees to another job, say that of a flight attendant. The average course fee is between 50,000 and 2 lakh rupees. Let's choose the upper limit. So the course costs 2 lakh rupees. And how much do you make? The average is around 40,000 rupees, 40,000. Now, I know these degrees and jobs are very, very different. The lifestyle and skills are also different, and the prospects later on are also different. But the point here is quite simple. From a monetary perspective, a flight attendant's course today is more valuable, which brings us back to MBAs and engineers. Are these degrees not worth it? Well, many companies think so. You see, a degree is like any other commodity. Higher the supply, lower the price. In this case, the price does not mean college fees, it means your salary. Again, let's look at MBAs. Every year, more than 230,000 MBAs enter the market, 230,000 every year, and that number will keep going up. Just consider the CAT, the Common Admission Test. You can enroll at MBA colleges based on your CAT score. Last year, there was a 30% jump in candidates. Now, do you see the problem here? More and more MBAs are entering the market, but the demand simply isn't there. In fact, MBA job openings dropped 55% in January this year. So what should students do? Well, the advice is quite simple. Follow the market. Focus on employability, not on degrees. That seems to be the biggest problem at the moment. Companies want people with specific skill sets. In the past, they would hire such people, but now they prefer to build them. Listen to one industry expert, and I'm quoting, a graduate at 5 to 6 lakh trained for 1 year is probably more relevant and effective than an MBA at 12 lakh who still needs to go through unlearning. So broadly speaking, two things must be done. First, identify emerging skills. These are things in high demand, things that will give you an edge in the jobs market. I can give you some examples. Like sustainability skills. Every company and country is going green, so huge opportunities will open up. Another example is machine learning. The World Economic Forum called it the fastest growing job. There's an AI model coming out every week, so the people making them will be in demand. Same for cybersecurity. As the world digitizes, we'll need more cyber guardians. So parents, teachers, and students need to identify such skills. They must work on it from school. That is the first step. The second step is creating institutions to develop these skills, maybe special courses or even specialized colleges. Look at the UAE, for example. They opened the world's first artificial intelligence college. Why can't India have one? You see, this engineering craze also did not drop from the sky. Parents saw the potential in it. Companies and governments needed engineers. Hence, engineering became India's thing. But now the market forces have moved on. The demand is for specialized skills, not degrees. So our colleges need to evolve. Luckily, money should not be a problem here. India's education industry is worth $117 billion. Indians are known to splurge on education. What they need is direction and awareness. Also, do not panic like it's the end of the world. Do not think that such changes are unprecedented or earth-shattering. Degrees going out of fashion is quite common. Just ask your friend with a Bachelor of Arts degree. Central banks have a thankless job. A lot of pressure, but not a lot of credit. Just consider India's central bank, the RBI or the Reserve Bank of India. Consider everything they do. They protect the Indian rupee from volatility. They defend Indians from inflation. They keep our interest rates in check, and they keep commercial banks honest. None of it is easy. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given the RBI a new task, an arguably tougher one. The Prime Minister was speaking at the RBI's Foundation Day. Listen to what he said.
ये प्रयास होना चाहिए कि हमारा रुपया पूरी दुनिया में ज्यादा एक्सेसिबल भी हो, एक्सेप्टेबल भी हो.
Globalize the rupee. That's the message from the government. But what does it mean? A global currency is basically a reserve currency. It is used in global trade. It's held by most central banks, and it's easily convertible. You can buy and sell this currency easily. And how many such currencies are there? Not many. The US dollar is the biggest one. It makes up 60% of all foreign exchange reserves, plus 40 to 50% of global trade. Other examples are the euro and the pound sterling. But nowadays, a lot of countries are de-dollarizing. They're moving away from the US dollar. China wants to globalize its yuan. BRICS is talking about its own currency. And now India wants to globalize the rupee. But why the sudden rush? Well, one reason is financial. Many countries are struggling with foreign reserves. They use dollars to repay loans and to trade. As a result, they're running out of dollars, like Sri Lanka did in 2022. So these countries are looking at other options, like trading in local currencies. The second reason is political. Some major exporters are under Western sanctions. Countries like Russia, China, even Iran, they're all sanctioned, so you cannot use dollars to buy from them. So what do countries do? They look beyond the US dollar. They try to use local currencies. And India's reasons are a mixture of both of these, political and economic. We trade a lot with countries like Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, countries that are low on dollar reserves. We also trade with sanctioned countries like Russia and Iran. So we need alternatives to the US dollar. But beyond this, there is also a third reason, a strategic goal. India is the fifth largest economy in the world. It aims to become the third largest in this decade. So we're talking about a global power, which means you cannot depend on foreign currencies. You need something more reliable, like a globalized Indian rupee. It would protect you from foreign volatility. It will also insulate you from economic warfare. So we've answered the what and the why. Now let's look at the how. How can India globalize the rupee? It won't happen overnight. Just look at the Chinese. After the 2008 recession, they decided to globalize their currency, the yuan. It's been almost 16 years now, yet the yuan makes up just 5.8% of international payments. It's still behind the dollar, the euro, and the pound, so do not expect miracles with the rupee. With that said, let's look at what India can do. And just a disclaimer, there is no exact handbook here. Different currencies had different paths to globalization. The pound used colonization, the dollar used the Second World War, and the euro used institutions. But if a country wants to globalize its currency, most economists talk about 4 requisites, 4 things that you need to do. The first is financial stability. Your overall debt must be under control, your inflation must be moderate, and your per capita income should be high. Various RBI committees have talked about this. They say fiscal deficit should be less than 3.5% of the GDP, and inflation must be less than 5%. And these levels must be maintained over a long period of time. Only then you signal stability. And I'm afraid India is not there yet. India's fiscal deficit is 5.8% of the GDP, so we need to fix it first. That is the first requirement. The second and the third requisites are linked. And the logic is quite simple here. You need more people to buy and hold the rupee. But they should have a reason to do that. Either India should export a lot of goods, in which case you can use the rupee to buy those goods or buy these exports. Or it must be great investment. The Indian rupee must be great investment. Let's look at exports first. India makes up just 2% of global exports. The US makes up 8.5% and China makes up almost 15%. So India's share needs to increase. If not, other countries may not want the rupee. Just look at Russia. They decided to call off the rupee-ruble trade system. Why? Because Moscow was stuck with billions of unusable rupees. Which brings us to the investment angle. Let's go back to the year 2010. Assume that you had $1 back then. $1 was worth 45 Indian rupees in 2010. Almost 14 years have passed. Today, that $1 is worth almost 83 Indian rupees. So the dollar has appreciated in value, but the rupee has not, meaning the rupee has not been a good investment. So you need to expand your exports and make the rupee desirable. Finally, let's look at the fourth requisite, removing state controls. You can pump endless foreign money into Indian markets, but the opposite is not allowed. You cannot take unlimited amounts of rupee outside India. There are limits on this movement, and these limits are called capital controls, and investors do not like them. What if their funds get stuck in India? What if the value keeps falling? So investors like currencies that flow freely. Same with currency value. The rupee is often defended by the Central Bank of India. If it falls too steeply, the RBI intervenes. They sell dollars in the market to prop up the rupee. Again, investors do not like this. They prefer a robust, free-floating currency. So the challenge ahead is huge. But the good news is that India is quite serious about it. In 2022, the RBI announced a big move. It allowed international trade settlements in rupees. Basically, traders could buy and sell in rupees, and many countries now accept the Indian currency. Countries like Bhutan, Nepal, the UAE, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, even Iran. All these countries allow trade in Indian rupees. Plus, India's exports are gradually rising. India's total exports were worth $500 billion in the year 2020. They increased to $770 billion in 2022, and they were expected to reach $900 billion in the last financial year. We are still waiting for official data. So to recap, there is a strategic need to globalize the rupee. There is political will to do it, and the financial requisites are slowly being achieved. This is a marathon where focus is the key. And speaking of disputed borders, India's biggest headache is China. It is aggressive and expansionist, and it does not respect the law. China has kicked off another map war with India. It has released a new list of places. These are Indian territories, but Beijing has given them Chinese names. This list has 30 names in all. All these places are in Arunachal Pradesh. There are 11 residential areas, 12 mountains, 4 rivers, 1 lake, 1 mountain pass, and 1 piece of land. That is China's list. All of these places belong to India, but China is now calling them by Mandarin names. It's an old trick of theirs. Whenever China wants to stake claim on Indian territory, they just give it a Chinese name. It's absurd. If we start calling Hong Kong Hanumangarh, it will not become Indian. But that's what China does. Beijing started releasing such lists in 2017. This is their 4th list. They say Arunachal Pradesh belongs to China. This is an Indian state in the northeast. China calls it Zangnan. The international community does not recognize the Chinese claim, but China does not care. It keeps releasing these lists. It keeps adding more names. The first list, released in 2017, had just 6 names. The second one came in 2021. It had 15 Indian territories with Chinese names. The third one came in 2023. It had 11 names. And now in 2024, China has released the 4th list with 30 names. What does this tell you? China is both repeating and expanding its claims, and its tone is becoming sharper. Listen to this.
Zangnan has been China's territory since ancient times. This is an undeniable fact. Where does the so-called Arunachal Pradesh come from?
That was a spokesperson from China's defense ministry. He's asking, where does Arunachal Pradesh come from? Typical wolf warrior, full of rhetoric with no basis in fact. These expanding claims and sharpening tone make one thing clear, though. They show that China is agitated. It is upset with India's improving border infrastructure. It does not like New Delhi's progress, and the progress has been significant. Last year, India launched 118 border projects. More than half of them were in Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh. Now, these are 2 critical areas along the India-China border, Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh, also among the most hotly contested regions. India is firming up its position in both these areas, and that has riled up the Chinese. One project in particular has raised eyebrows in Beijing. This is the Sela Tunnel. It was inaugurated by Prime Minister Modi himself last month. This tunnel connects Arunachal Pradesh with Assam. Assam is a neighboring state in the northeast. The tunnel connects Arunachal Pradesh with Assam. And when this tunnel was opened, China threw a fit.
The China-India border issue remains unresolved. India has no right to unilaterally develop Zangnan, known as South Tibet in English, which belongs to China.
Beijing protested the Prime Minister's visit. It said the Indian Prime Minister had no business travelling to Arunachal Pradesh, let alone inaugurating a project. And India responded in kind.
This is not a new issue. China has laid claim. It has expanded its claim. The claims were ludicrous to begin with. They remain ludicrous today.
The claims are ludicrous. New Delhi replied to China in the same tone. It has called China's claims absurd and baseless. India has also commented on the latest list. It says China's attempt to assign invented names does not alter the reality. Arunachal Pradesh remains an integral part of India, and the world supports India's position. A few days ago, this is what the United States said.
The United States recognizes Arunachal Pradesh as Indian territory, and we strongly oppose any unilateral attempts to advance territorial claims by incursions or encroachments, military or civilian, across the line of actual control.
China slammed the US for this. It said India and China can resolve their differences themselves. That's also New Delhi's position, by the way. It wants to resolve differences bilaterally and peacefully. But there's a problem. China is not serious about this. It has been provoking India and salami slicing to usurp Indian land. In 2020, Chinese troops attacked in Ladakh. They targeted Indian soldiers. Since then, commanders from both sides have been meeting. They've had 21 rounds of talks in 4 years. To what end? India keeps pushing for complete disengagement. China keeps raising tensions with more deployments, more provocations, and more lists of Indian villages with Chinese names. These are not the actions of a neighbor seeking peace. These are the traits of a devious and deceptive player. India's best bet is to stay the course, try to avoid conflict while aggressively preparing for it. Let's turn to Europe now, where NATO is celebrating its birthday. Quite an important one too. Thursday marks the 75th anniversary of NATO's foundation. So the foreign ministers have gathered in advance. And their big mission? A long-term plan for Ukraine. NATO is looking to raise $100 billion for Kiev. This money will be spread across 5 years. But why now? It's been more than 2 years since the war started. So why is NATO proposing this now? Listen to what the alliance chief said.
We are now discussing ways to institutionalize more of the support within a NATO framework, to make it more predictable, to make it more robust, because we strongly believe that support to Ukraine should be less dependent on short-term voluntary offers and more dependent on long-term NATO commitments.
Let me repeat that. NATO wants the aid to be predictable. And it's clear why. Joe Biden had promised some $60 billion in aid, but the US Congress has refused to pass it. And then you have Donald Trump. If he wins the White House, all bets are off, because Trump has hinted at cutting off military aid to Ukraine. So what does NATO do? Create a long-term funding plan. Diplomats are calling it Trump-proof. But how will such a plan work? Right now, NATO is not giving lethal aid to Ukraine. As an alliance, it is only giving non-lethal aid. All the military stuff is being given at the bilateral level. Member countries are giving arms to Ukraine, not NATO per se. The plan is to change that. NATO wants to take over the Ramstein Group. It's a coalition created to channel weapons to Ukraine. Currently, the US leads this group, which means a future US president could handicap it. So NATO wants to take over. It wants to lead the lethal weapon supply to Kiev, which again raises two questions. One, where will this money come from? And two, will all NATO members agree to this plan? Now, diplomats say all 32 alliance members will contribute money. How much is not clear yet. NATO already has a formula for sharing its budget. Maybe they will apply the same to this. If so, the US could end up giving $16 billion. And question number two, will all the members agree? Looks tough at the moment. The likes of Hungary are not keen on this move. They say if NATO gives military aid, it will bring them closer to war. Others like Germany are on board.
It is essential for us to turn the structures that we created on an ad hoc basis back then, for example, education, training and planning, into truly structured, reliable, long-term structures.
The talks will be tough, but NATO is hoping to get this done by July. That's when NATO leaders will meet in Washington. But forget military aid for a moment. After all, it's a very divisive topic. Instead, let's look at NATO's economic warfare. Why has that failed? Because Europe is still buying Russian energy, and a lot of it. Before the war, Europe bought piped gas from Russia. It made up almost 37% of the EU's supply. But after the war, that supply fell from 37% to just 8.7%. And it was good news for Europe. They wanted to reduce reliance on Russian gas. But lately, the trend is changing. More Russian gas is now reaching Europe. Moscow's share has gone up, from 8.7% to 15%. How did that happen? Because of LNG, liquefied natural gas, around 10% of piped gas has been replaced by LNG. And why is no one complaining about this? Because it's a shady trade. You see, Russia exports LNG to many countries, countries like China and Japan. But some of these shipments are rejected. And that's what happened in Argentina. A Russian LNG shipment reached Argentina last year, but the importer rejected it. Argentina rejected it, apparently because of some trouble with payments. So the shipments were rerouted to another country. Guess where? Spain. In fact, Spain is the biggest importer of Russian LNG in Europe. They buy some 5.2 billion cubic meters. Does this not violate sanctions? Well, technically, no, it does not. The EU has only sanctioned Russian oil. You can still buy Russian gas. Plus, most of these purchases are rerouted supplies, which means there is no Russian tag. You see, deliveries only mention the last destination. They do not mention the origin. So that shipment from Argentina would not have a Russian tag. It would have only mentioned Argentina. The gas came from Argentina then. And this is a technicality / hypocrisy. Europe is buying Russian gas through the back door, and they're spending billions of it. $30 billion to be precise, $30 billion of Russian gas, but there is no criticism. That's only safe for countries like India. All the European lectures to India for buying Russian oil when they themselves keep buying Russian gas. Typical European hypocrisy. It also tells you why this war keeps dragging on. Because the West is effectively funding both sides. Now let's turn our attention to South America, where a big claim by Nicolas Maduro has sparked a debate. He's the Venezuelan president, Maduro. He says America's CIA has secret military bases in the region, inside the territory of Essequibo, controlled by Guyana and claimed by Venezuela. This region is rich in oil. It is also disputed. Maduro claims Essequibo belongs to his country, Venezuela. Guyana refutes this claim, and with good reason. They have administered Essequibo for a century now. They say it's theirs. So what is Maduro trying to do by dragging the US into this dispute? He's trying to win some support by highlighting America's history of war over oil. Our next report revisits America's controversial past.
A century-old dispute has flared up in South America again. An oil-rich region is at the heart of it. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro says the Americans have their sights on the disputed region.
And we have proven information that in the territory of Guyana, temporarily administrated by Guyana, they have installed secret military bases of the Southern Command, military nuclei of the Southern Command, and nuclei of the CIA.
This row is over Essequibo, a territory of Guyana, which Maduro claims belongs to Venezuela. In 2015, major oil deposits were found off Essequibo's shore by a consortium led by ExxonMobil, an American oil giant. Extraction activities started 4 years later in 2019, and they have transformed Guyana, generating some $1 billion a year for the country. But Maduro says this boom is effectively an American takeover, and Guyana's President Irfan Ali is working for American oil interests.
The President and Irfan do not govern Guyana. Guyana is governed by the Southern Command, the CIA, and ExxonMobil, and I am not exaggerating.
Maduro's claims revolve around an office in Guyana. It was set up by the US Defense Department. Reports say this office is for security cooperation, and its staff advise Guyana's defense force. America maintains security ties with Guyana, providing military support and training to the country. Both countries also hold joint military drills together, and that's a problem for Maduro. Last year, he stirred up a storm. Maduro held a referendum, one that ended up reviving Venezuela's claims over Essequibo. For the longest time, Venezuelans have argued that Essequibo was stolen from them over a century ago. The referendum allowed Maduro to revive the claim and begin efforts to seize it. At the time, America stepped in. US forces joined Guyana's defense forces and kick-started training exercises to keep Maduro at bay. The Venezuelan president now is drawing attention to this relationship and using the opportunity to inject fresh momentum into his campaign. America's history in oil-rich regions may add weight to his arguments. Before 2001, Iraq's oil industry was closed and nationalized. But the American invasion paved the way for Western oil companies to enter Iraq. Names like ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, and Shell established operations in the country and kicked off extraction operations. They remained in Iraq long after the American soldiers were gone. For Iraq, the invasion was a big blow to its economy as well as its financial reserves. Iraq lost around $150 billion worth of oil revenues. The funds were taken out of the country illicitly after the invasion. Maduro is bringing up America's past to make his case, but it remains to be seen if his arguments will find any takers.
Our next story is from Africa, from Botswana in the south. It's a moderately large landlocked nation and home to just about 2.5 million people, which makes Botswana one of the most sparsely populated countries on earth. So what is happening with this relatively empty African nation? Well, it has decided to pick a fight with Germany. Botswana's president has threatened the Germans, not with a conventional war or anything like that, no. Botswana is threatening to send elephants to Germany, 20,000 of them. The message is, see how you like living with them. To understand this mammoth spat, we need to understand Botswana and its elephants. This country is home to about 1/3 of the world's elephant population, about 130,000 of them, 130,000 elephants. Botswana is one of their last sanctuaries. African elephants used to roam across most of the continent at one point, but poaching and animal-human conflict have thinned their numbers. The situation is especially bad in poorer areas. For example, northern Cameroon. It once had thousands of elephants, but the last major survey counted only 148. Elephants are expected to go extinct there because poachers kill them for their valuable tusks, for ivory. But Botswana's elephants have avoided this fate. The country is one of the richest per capita in Africa. It has a thriving diamond export trade, and it is known for wildlife tourism. The income from tourism is second only to that from diamonds. And a lot of this money is reinvested in Botswana's nature reserves. It is used to defend against poachers and improve the lives of people that stay close to the reserves. Now, all of this sounds good so far, but there's also a problem. Botswana cannot handle all the elephants it has. There are too many to keep track of. They keep encroaching into human settlements, and incidents of human-animal conflict are on the rise. So what does Botswana do? It allows people to hunt the elephants. That's right. The world's best example of conservation is also an elephant hunting zone. Botswana allows rich foreigners to come to the country. They pay for a hunting license, pretend to be wild, intrepid explorers, slay an animal that did nothing wrong to them, and then take home a hunting trophy. You can imagine why rich, soft urban Europeans would enjoy this. A reenactment of colonial exploitation, recreating the imperial experience. It sounds disturbing, but Botswana says it is pragmatic. Europeans pay good money for these hunts, so Botswana humors the intrepid cosplayers, takes their money and uses it to fund conservation efforts. A side effect is that these hunts help cull the elephant population, helping reduce human-animal conflict. Morally speaking, it doesn't sound like a great solution, but if Botswana is taking care of the elephants, who are we to lecture them? Of course, the Europeans do not share this worldview. They love to preach morality and ethics, even when it's their own citizens who are paying for the hunts. Which brings us back to present day. Germany is planning to clamp down on the import of hunting trophies. Basically, animal bones and hide, like from the hunted elephants. The German government believes that this will discourage trophy hunting. After all, if the cosplayers cannot show off, maybe they won't bother. Germany's intention is good, but it seems they haven't consulted Botswana. The president of Botswana is furious about this. The country has set up a delicate system, a way to pay for the conservation, but Germany unilaterally wants to do away with this. And they have the cheek to lecture Botswana while they're at it. Which is why Botswana's president, Masisi, made a threat. He said he wants to give Germany a gift of 20,000 elephants, and he says he won't take no for an answer. Masisi said Germans should, and I'm quoting, live together with the animals in the way you're trying to tell us to. Imagine 20,000 elephants in Berlin lounging around the Brandenburg Gate and blocking traffic along the Autobahn. Maybe Germany and Europe in general deserve this, a reward for all their sermons, but that may be unfair to the elephants themselves. For the greater good, maybe they should remain in Botswana, and the next time Europe wants to do something, they should talk to the Africans instead of taking unilateral decisions and making mammoth mistakes. Our second story is about Google. If the internet is a treasure chest of information, Google search is perhaps the key to unlock it. It is hard to imagine the internet without Google search. For countless people, the internet means Google. They cannot navigate the internet without it. And a big reason for that is this: Google search is free. But is that about to change? Will Google start charging you every time you look something up? I ask because Google is planning a major shakeup, perhaps the biggest one since the company came into existence. Google is toying with the idea of charging users for its services. It's not official yet, no plans have been announced formally, but reports say Google is working on paid services. Its coders are developing a new set of features that Google could put behind a paywall. They have not made up their mind yet, the top executives have not cleared the plan, and yet it's creating a lot of buzz because the very prospect is worth dwelling on. The fact that they're thinking along these lines, it would be a big shift for Google. And how would it work? Will you have to pull out your credit card every time you log on to Google for something? Look at the services that they offer for free: Gmail, Photos, YouTube, Chrome, Maps, Meets for online meetings, and Drive for online storage. All of these are available for free. Of course, many of them also have a paid version. Like you can pay to get more storage on Gmail. You can pay to get YouTube Premium. It doesn't show you ads. When you watch something on YouTube, you do not get ads, hence the premium fee. But these subscriptions are more like upgrades to existing services. They're offered to improve the user experience. Google never charges its users for access. Then how does it make money? By showing ads on Google search. It remains the company's biggest money churner. Last year, Google generated $175 billion through ads. This was more than 50% of Google's total sales through ads. So search is the biggest profit center for Google, then why start charging for it? Because there's a new disruptor in the game. It's called AI, artificial intelligence. Like most tech companies, Google is building AI features into its services, and that's what they plan to charge you for, the AI features. From what we understand, the traditional search engine will remain free and continue to be funded by advertising. But if you want AI to, say, skim through the results and present a quick summary, you may be asked to pay for it. Google's AI chatbot is called Gemini. It is being pitted against OpenAI's ChatGPT. Now, Gemini is trying to catch up in the AI race, and Google is scrambling to install it in all its major services. So scaling up is proving to be a big challenge because AI needs a lot more of computing resources, and for that, Google needs to spend a lot of money. Experts say making users pay for the AI service makes sense. There are 3 clear benefits for Google. 1, it can scale up quickly. 2, recover some of the cost of investment. And 3, keep its profit margins intact. That's the opinion from Bank of America. But will Google follow this path? It won't be an easy decision to make. Google going from free to paid will impact not just Google, but also a lot of its other users, like business owners who rely on Google to find customers, or websites that rely on Google for traffic. Plus, what happens to Google's advertising business? Will the company sacrifice its biggest cash cow as it makes a big bet on artificial intelligence? I guess they'll have to strike a balance. What they absolutely cannot do is sit out of the AI race. Artificial intelligence is the future of search. If Google can find the information that you need, AI can make it more relevant and useful. Searching on Google today, or any search engine, may feel like trying to find a needle in a haystack. You have to go through a long list of website links to find that one specific piece of information that you're looking for. But AI can speed up and optimize this process. It can find what you're looking for almost instantaneously. So it is crucial for Google to get its AI strategy right. Their future depends on it. I have both good and bad news for you. The good news is we are living longer. According to new research, global life expectancy has risen by 6.2 years between 1990 and 2021. The bad news is now you need to save more for all those future retirement years. How much more? Honestly, there's no set number. Study after study gives you a different figure. But for most people, all studies come to one conclusion. No matter how much you're saving, it is not enough. You should be saving much more, especially if you're young, and one vacation or one hospital visit away from financial ruin. Then you should stop spending money on anything right now and save for the future, which is scary and sounds like an impossible ask. No wonder research also shows something else. Worries about retiring are rife the world over, and they extend to a newfound prey, Gen Z, those born between the late 1990s and the early 2010s. The oldest among them have just entered their late 20s and they're already anxious about their retirement. In fact, Gen Z have a term for such worry. It's called retirement anxiety. No surprises here. This is the same cohort that came up with menu anxiety for when people are confused about their order at a restaurant. Linguistics may be an extreme sport for the young. But that aside, they aren't alone in their worry. Even millennials have retirement anxiety. Look at the US. According to a new survey, the average American adult believes they need $1.46 million to retire comfortably. That's the magic number, more than $1.4 million. But can Americans save this amount before they retire? 55% do not think so. Let alone saving for retirement, 44% American adults do not have $1,000 in savings to pay in case of an emergency. Reports say the US is steadily walking towards a retirement crisis, and they aren't the only ones with retirement anxiety. Now, the magic number for savings differs from country to country. There are several factors at play here, like per capita income, inflation rates, retirement plans, taxes, cost of living, even healthcare infrastructure. What do you get? But across nations, as Gen Z would say, retirement planning doesn't have a good vibe right now. Let's look at India. What will it take to retire comfortably in the world's most populous nation? Apparently 1.3 crore rupees, that is the average. That is close to $156,000. And have people been able to save this kind of money? Not really. According to a survey, 2 in 5 Indian adults are yet to start retirement planning. 61% worry savings will deplete within 10 years. So the growing sentiment is this: we cannot afford to retire. At the same time, the money required is increasing year on year. Take the UK, for example. A single person will need $40,000 a year for a moderate income in retirement. In 2023, this number was about $10,000 lesser. Now look at Canada. They believe they need $1.2 million to retire. 3 years ago, this figure stood at $1 million, so that's a 20% increase. And now 56% Canadians are worried about retirement. So this is a growing trend. And what's behind it? Economic uncertainty, wars, climate change, the pandemic, you name the problem and it has a role to play. So far, so concerning. But the thing is, saving for retirement was never easy. Today, it's the cost of living crisis. 20 years ago, it was a financial crisis. Before that, it was wars or famine. There is always something that will hurt your savings. So retirement anxiety may have a cool name now, but the concept has existed for generations. And here's the thing about anxiety. It grows when you feel that a situation is out of your control. So how can you cope with the retirement anxiety? Control what you can, and as much as you can, and perhaps resign to the rest. Map out a strategy, figure out what you'll be spending when you retire, how much you need to save for it. Psychologically, adjust to not having a steady paycheck. Create your own security blanket, and no matter where you are, which part of the world, or how old you are, do know that now is a good time to save. Also to all the young and anxious people out there, it is good that you're thinking about your future. It is great that you care enough to worry. But do you know what's even better than that? Planning. Are you tired? If you belong to the 21st century, the answer is most likely yes. Our lives and jobs have become increasingly complex. Now, keeping busy is the modus operandi. Laboring over to-do lists is the norm. And stress, you could say, is our best friend. Often this is good. It helps us set higher benchmarks for ourselves, then pushes us to achieve them. But there is a flip side here. It can shift focus from personal well-being, and this comes with severe consequences. Anxiety and stress-related diseases are on the rise. 1 in 4 workers the world over are experiencing burnout, and that is the average, 1 in 4. In the US, 43% workers suffer from burnout. In India, the number stands at 59%, and in South Korea, it is 70%. And these are only a few examples. The fact is, no one is immune to burnout. But the Dutch claim there is a way out. It is called Niksen. It is as simple as doing nothing, quite literally. Niksen comes from the Dutch word niks, which means nothing. So Niksen refers to the art of doing nothing. It is difficult to define what nothing means here. After all, we are always doing something, even when we are sleeping. But practicing Niksen is about being idle or doing something without a goal, the goal of being productive. This does not mean that one stares at a wall, because that's just creepy. Doom scrolling or meditation does not qualify either, because your brain remains actively engaged. Niksen simply involves moments of relaxation combined with easy automatic activities where the brain is allowed to switch off. It could mean just hanging around or listening to music or knitting. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. People can do what works for them. And it seems like many have been. Over the past few years, Niksen has intrigued the world. It has become a publishing sensation. There are fitness clubs with Niksen classes, even experts who teach people how to do, well, nothing. Niksen may have been born in the Netherlands, but today it is a global rage. Though we should point something here, the Dutch are not the only ones who support this theory. The Danish have a concept called hygge. It refers to staying in, not doing much, and just being cozy. Then there is lagom. It's a Swedish concept of accepting life with a moderation mindset. But it's not just about cool words or capitalism working its magic with wellness trends. It is about the wide-ranging benefits of slowing down. There are mental perks here. Ironically, doing nothing makes us more productive. It allows us to rest, to come back with more focus, with sustained attention. It boosts creativity. And then there are physical advantages. Niksen curtails the aging process. Believe it or not, it strengthens the immune system. There are emotional advantages as well, like reduced anxiety and stress and improved mood. And this is enough to encourage most of us to practice Niksen. The problem is, it can be difficult. Doing nothing is a tough ask. It is not easy to let go of outcomes. It requires some amount of rewiring, because humans have a tendency of thinking in terms of doing and not being. And Niksen is about actively carving out the time to just be. If you're thinking on similar lines, remember that Niksen is called an art for a reason. It needs to be cultivated. So find the balance between working hard and taking a beat. Try to push through the initial discomfort. Choose it over the familiarity of busyness. Do something without an objective for a change, but do it with purpose. And dare to be idle, because stress is a part of life, but burnout does not have to be.